And we are live. Welcome everyone to DCA in the new edition. Greetings from Stockholm, Sweden. And with us we have two amazing guests.
Welcome guys, welcome James, good to see you. Jay, looks very cold where you are, bro.
Yeah, it's a little bit cold. It's winter time where we are.
So, is it even colder than Sweden?
There we go. Sorry, I had to switch off my YouTube. Cool. I think we got a lot to cover today. I think today is going to be a fun show. Everybody's talking about this pump. No one believes it. The people that don't believe it are getting saltier and saltier and saltier by the hour. The people that do believe it are making a lot of noise in Twitter, like it's the end of the bull market and we're about to see the end of the bear market and we're about to see all-time highs. I think the question in everybody's mind is this pump real? Is this another bear trap or bull trap or whatever you want to call it? What is this about? You know, you got some big names in crypto. So if you look at like people like Capo calling it the biggest bear trap you've ever seen. What are we thinking, guys? I mean, what side of the fence are we on?
Exactly. So we will cover that, and we will cover a lot of things here today. So we will cover that one. That's the question we're all thinking about, right? Is it a bull trap or is it the real cyclic bottom for Bitcoin and this whole market? Then we will cover, are there more black swans ahead? You know, that's what kind of hindered us through a lot of 2022. Is there another one? What about DCG? Then, if that's not the case, and we are going up, there will be a lot of altcoin opportunities. And as we all know, they tend to, in an uptrend, outperform Bitcoin. So which are they? Which are the ones that we should monitor to follow? Then another thing, what about Bitcoin dominance? Is that even relevant? Because I'm using it, a lot of people are using it to kind of study, should we be in Bitcoin, should we be in altcoins, during which period, and what should we look at? Is it flawed? Is it out of date? Then let's look at, there's a lot of challenges with illegal use of crypto that's holding back a lot of the adoption, a lot of the regulation, institutions. Is that the case or is it just a narrative? And number 6, is this the time for the DEXs or is it the time for the centralized exchanges to make a comeback? And we have some interesting news and interesting developments. So that's what we will try to cover. It's an action-packed schedule, but let's go back to the first question. Ran, you phrased it so well. And what do you think yourself?
Well, okay, before we start, I do want to just say, guys, smash up the likes, subscribe to Lars's channel, because that's how people know we're live. If you hit the like button, it tells YouTube that we're live. It starts circulating the content. And I think because the show is so new, the three of us have got together recently to bring you guys this crypto wisdom and crypto love. We need your help. So the easiest way to do it is just smash the like, subscribe.
And make sure to, subscribe to, you probably are already, but if you're not, subscribe to Ran, James, Crypto Banter, and Invest Answers. They are great. I watch them. And I learned a lot.
And we're giving away a Rolex. No, I'm kidding. Let's go. We are giving away the Rolex, but that's not okay. Listen, I think let's get very serious and let's get to the point here. The idea behind catching the bottom is not to actually catch the bottom, because that's very, very risky. The idea is to get to a point where you believe the potential downside and the potential upside are completely asymmetrical, right? And so when I take a year where we've had mass liquidations in crypto, we've had black swan after black swan. You had Luna, and then you had a deleveraging, and that took down everybody else. You should expect a very fast comeback. Now, yeah, we're getting the comeback. A, we were in a very oversold position. B, we're getting a rebound in the macro narrative, where all of a sudden this talk about inflation is, we're actually in a position now where inflation is under 2% on an annualized basis, and so the sentiment has started to shift. Now, I'll show you a few things around sentiment, which I actually showed on my show today, which I think are worth looking at. So the first thing is, if you look at just the basic sentiment indicator, which is the fear and greed. So the fear and greed index is showing us that we are at 50, which means we are neutral. And the last time that we were at 50, we were in April last year on the way down. And the last time we were at 50 on the way up was last year in Feb, and that was the beginning of a huge bull market. This is the first time that we've seen 50 since then on the Fear and Greed Index. You're getting shorts getting liquidated. You're getting Bitcoin long-term holders. So Bitcoin holders where the realized price, the price is higher than the realized price, which means that the average holder is now in profit. When people are in profit, they tend to be more, to be able to take more risks. And then I'm not a technical analyst, but from a technical point of view, we broke through the 200-day moving average. I'll quickly just go to the Bitcoin chart. All this I did discuss earlier on my show, but I think it's worth mentioning to say why I'm so bullish. So, on the one hand, Bitcoin's now smashed through the 200-day moving average. You can see that here. Bitcoin smashed through the FTX high, or the pre-FTX high. And Bitcoin also smashed through the long-term downtrend on both the daily and the weekly that we've been in since November last year when we hit the all-time high. So when I look at all those things together, I say, look, I'm not quite sure what other confirmations people would be looking for to say that the trend has certainly changed. I'm not going to say that we're now in a raging bull market, but I can say that the bear market trend has changed. I don't know what other indicators to look at. Every indicator that I look at keeps giving me the same result. On-chain, technical, fundamental. So I appreciate that a lot of people may have PTSD, and I also appreciate that I may be wrong. But for me, the most important thing is that there needs to be more upside than downside very asymmetrically. And I think that that's where we're at today, where the downside and the upside are very, very, very asymmetrical. And that's why, to be honest, I'm deploying aggressively now. Now I've gone from keep deploying to deploy aggressively, or you're going to miss. You may miss a huge pump here.
Very nice. So I've got some.
So James, what's your take?
Well, this is fascinating. I did a video a couple of weeks ago, I think a week or 10 days ago, and I called it the most hated rally because of exactly what Rand said. And, the whole question, I think you said, is Bitcoin back, or is it a bull trap, or whatever, manipulation? Well, the sad thing is, if it is a bull trap, it's a massive move. You got so many names up so much. Solana 150%, Bitcoin 40%, Ethereum 40%, Near 100%, Phantom 90%. So you've missed out on massive, massive moves. I mean, you need a huge haircut to bring these things back down. And many people out there are still saying they expect lower lows on crypto. And that is exactly that PTSD that people have. But you got to remember, markets always go up. When you look at least bull traps, I'm very familiar with them from an equity perspective. And to compare equity analogs to crypto, I typically multiply by 2. So putting all that aside, if you look at the 4 elements of a typical bull trap, they are lack of volume. Bull trap is always accompanied by a lack of trading volume. Nope, we have volume. You agree? Second, divergence in indicators. A bull trap can bring about the big divergence, things like RSI and other technical indicators. There is some of that. The RSI is a little bit high, but it depends on the time frame you're using. And then you have a break of key support or resistance levels. That's a key indication of that. And yet we broke the down sliding resistance level Rand just showed. And to me, it looks like 25K is the next level. But there's still a lot of unknowns out there. And then the 4th element is kind of negative news and fundamentals. And a bull trap is typically indicated by negative news. But we have negative news, and Bitcoin's not moving down on the negative news. But it's for the first time in as long as I can remember, it's moving up on positive news. So like take DCG, for example, we'll talk about later. It didn't blip at all, hardly. And also the Fed pivot is coming. Like it or love it, they're already swiveling down to 25 basis points next meeting. And then after that, they'll make up some CPI number and say, hey, look, we're data driven. Look, we got 2%. Yay, because we're cooking the books. When we know historically over the last 40 years, inflation's never been under 5%. So that's my take. There are elements of a bull trap, but it definitely, if it's a bull trap, it's the biggest I've ever seen.
James, and Lars, I know we're all bullish because we had a chat before the show, and I'm going to hear in a second why CTO is bullish. But I think it's very important that we try and have look at the other side of it. Always try and look at the other side of the coin. And I'm thinking about other people which are bearish, and I'm trying to think to myself, what would actually make them? What other indicators would they need to see to actually become bullish? I'm very interested. Like, do they want to get back over the 200-week moving average? Because that could be. I mean, that would take us. I think the price is around 26,000. Would they wait for that as confirmation? I just, because I know we're all bullish, I'm trying to look to say, well, what are the non-bullish people actually looking at?
Well, I think the problem is the psychology. And CTO, I'm sure you notice this as well. I always say, don't chase replace when there's been such a big move. And people are feeling, oh, if I buy now, it's too late. Bet you the minute I buy, it's going to tank again. And that's keeping them out. CTO, what's your take?
Yeah, so I saw some comment. I think Ran, you shared it also. Someone wrote that, guys, watch out. It's not a real bottom. It's manipulation. Yeah. I mean, of course it's manipulation. It's not like markets is like some nice community of community members that organically get together and do something. No, it's not like that. There's big players that have enough money to move the markets. That's how markets work. It's not just in crypto. It's in stock and in everything. Of course, there's an element of manipulation. That's not the reason to not respect the price, because price means that there is people, if price goes up, there is more volume buying than there are people wanting to sell. And how that is constituted exactly, I don't care about so much. And I certainly don't, shy away from this opportunity, because it seems like there is maybe few big players that have moved the price in very big moves. That's a fact. But yeah, that's why wouldn't I take back on them then? They probably have more opportunity to turn this around than, say, a lot of retail investors on Twitter. They're not going to be able to turn Bitcoin around if there's large sellers and going in that direction. So for me, it's very simple. Price has turned around. It used to be in a downtrend. Now it is in an uptrend. That's really all there is to it. And then the fact that it's kind of manipulated by large players, it doesn't change that, in my opinion, at all. On the contrary, it just kind of makes me more positive. But of course, we should be aware this is not going to be easy. Whoever are driving the markets, they're not going to make it easy for the vast majority. Like the top was a textbook Wyckoff play. That's a 100-year-old textbook, how to, big players can manipulate the small players and squeeze out as much money as possible. That's just a fact. You can overlay the Wyckoff and it's exactly textbook. And so there's going to be fakes, there's going to be, and this was a very successful one. Looking at the sentiment on Twitter, I think most people were completely sidelined by this. They missed it, and they're probably still sidelined. And then maybe it goes even higher. Then when all those people, late longers, they jump on the train. They feel I can't take it anymore. I'm missing it. I need to be on. And they jump on. Then boom, maybe it goes down instead. And maybe, there's going to be something like that, I think.
When you look at it from your indicators, I mean, I know that you're amongst us, you're the most technical of us all. What are the indicators saying? Like, what needs to happen for this to be like a fully confirmed bull market? If we were to look at your indicators.
Yeah. So for me, it already is. Maybe I can share that actually.
James, while he's sharing it, if you were out of the market because you try to time this market, if you were out of the market, would you be getting in now? On a 1 year, on a 1 year time horizon?
Well, first of all, I've been around too long to be out of the market. It's good to be in large percentages of cash, but it's never good to be completely out of the market, although I was right before COVID. In terms of what you do, it's just, it's a whole psychological game, and it's a very, very difficult question. If I was out and I was in cash, I'd just bite the bullet and definitely deploy 30 to 50% of whatever cash I had, because you can't wait. And then wait, if it does reverse, then you can layer in as it goes down. But it's just the problem. The problem with crypto, it's so new and it moves so fast, and that is the danger. And even if you go back to summer 2022 and look at the action there, many things actually bottomed back then. Then we had the FTX thing, which took things a little bit lower, but the impact of FTX on a percentage basis wasn't actually that tragic, which actually was a very bullish sign.
Yeah.
So I think
sorry,
my feeling here is I agree with you. The 30%, if you're out of the market, I would deploy 30% now. Forget about the price, deploy now. If it goes down, deploy more. If it goes up, deploy more. But you don't want to be the arsehole sitting on his hands on the side watching the market double and triple in value. You've already done that. You've missed. I mean, I just want to before I let you I just want to show this chart here, because I just think it's such an important thing to look at. This is the last month in crypto, and this is the last month in the top 100 coins. So these are not small cap altcoins. These are the top 100 coins. Like, this is like the biggest 100 cryptos, up 115% on Sol, but actually 200% if you go from the bottom. Frax up 126%, Aptos up 250%. You can Lido up 178%. Problem is that if you're out the market and you miss that, then right now you're hating the pump, and that's the problem. People are hating this pump because there it is. Lars, take us to your indicators.
No, absolutely. I just want to really reinforce that, because it's easy to get paralyzed in these situations. And I'm sure we all hear the same stories, people who are paralyzed at the top, they realize they should have taken action, didn't take any action. But it's equally easy to get paralyzed at the bottom. You kind of feel that, I should have bought. I didn't buy. Okay, now I wait. And then you wait, and then you don't and then when it does retrace a little bit, you feel, maybe it was a scam pump after all. You don't dare to enter, you don't dare to do anything. And one way to do it is exactly what you said, Ran. You enter with a little bit, so you at least take some action. Enter with, something, just little bit.
That's
so you're
the best.
on it. And then you can okay, if it dumps tomorrow, right after you bought then, okay, then you have another entry there, but do something.
That's the best for me. That's the best medicine for FOMO. So like when I see a token running and I start getting that FOMO feeling, which I'm sure every trader gets, or most traders get, the way that I stop my FOMO is I dip my toe in the water, even though I think it's run. So like, I'll give you an example. GMX, when GMX started running, I wasn't in it. And then I got into it. And then when I got into it, I stopped having FOMO, because if it went down, I started to feel a bit of pain. If it went up, I was like, at least I got some exposure. Not the exposure that I want. I didn't go all in. I didn't time it perfectly, but at least I have some exposure. Take us to the indicator. Take us to the.
Exactly. I will just add one more thing before, because we talked about before that it might run higher, and it's interesting. We're three people here who spend all our time in crypto. Here we have a fourth one, Ivan on tech. RSA will reset when we dump from 30K to 27K, because I think a lot of people who do spend a lot of time in this market, we kind of smell that this could be a turnaround pretty early. And clearly, Ivan had the same opinion. So let me share.
$230 million was just minted from USDC and transferred into Coinbase. Where do you think that's going? I mean, you're starting to get all of these whale alerts of like 500 million USDT, 300 million USDT, now 230 million USDC. You kind of know where that's going. I mean, come on, like, you don't have to be clever to work out where it's going.
Exactly. And if everyone here, if you just learned one thing about technical analysis from this session, this would be it. On the right side here, you see the volume profile. That means how much volume was bought at which price. And then you see that the highest volume on this entire chart going back from late 2021 until today was here. Can you see what enormous volumes were bought here around 16,900? Someone was buying here. Certainly wasn't, the average retail trader on Twitter, because everyone was bearish here. But someone went in and bought a humongous amount of Bitcoin here. And then price started running up. And suddenly the market structure changed. The levels that were resistance started breaking up. First this level and then this level. And we had this enormous spike of volume below. And that's where I felt that, guys, something is happening here. I bought here 17,400 ahead of my own indicator flip, which then later turned gold. And yeah, we have confirmation in the chart. Someone has bought and trend has turned up. And yeah, that's what I base it on. Then if things change,
can I make a suggestion here? Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Next week, can we bring on a bear onto the show, and we'll have a fourth person on the show? Let's have like a real a bear that has huge conviction in this market, who's also respectable, and let's get them on the show. And I really want to have a logical, rational discussion with someone who's bearish, because I think it's important that we show the audience both sides. We're all bullish, all our indicators have triggered, but we have to address the other side. Yeah. So I think what we got to do next week is let's get a bear on. I think let us know in the comments. Let us know in the comments who you want on. I don't think Kappa will come on.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Let's do that. And let's look a little bit about, let's change hats. So we've had the, happy bull hat on now. Let's change hat. What if there's another catastrophe looming? We talked about it last time, but since last week, we've had the Genesis development, bankruptcy filing. How do you see? Could this in some way lead to Grayscale trust gets unwinded? They have to, close it down, sell the Bitcoin. If that happens, it's 600,000 Bitcoin on the market, and who is going to buy the first one? No one. So it's going to dump, and it's going to dump to unimaginable levels if that happens. Do you guys see any possibility of that happening?
I must tell you, I sprained my neck at jiu-jitsu, and I'm so that the idea of the GBTC trust being liquidated makes absolutely no sense. That my neck started to move again. I'm able to nod, and so that's how ludicrous the notion is. James, you have a view here. I'll pick up after your view. Is James frozen?
James froze suddenly. It was so cold that James's location.
So oh wait, he's back.
Sorry,
he's back.
I just want to say one thing as well, CTO, regarding your last chart on the compression of volume. You have to remember that's the volume traded at that price level. So the longer you stay at a price level, the bigger the spike.
Yes.
So that's an important aspect.
It is,
but regarding DCG, the crisis is, they owe what, 3.3 billion, maybe 10 billion. It's a complete mess. But the beauty of Grayscale is it is it's a trust product. And under the law, I think it's Delaware is where it's established. The product is highly independent and isolated. It's created by the contract under the government, and its termination can only be liquidated under very clear conditions that are written in the contract. And that includes force majeure items like the collapse of the Bitcoin network, Bitcoin price going to zero, or something really, really catastrophic happening. Barry Silbert can't say, you know what, I'm going to liquidate Grayscale right now. But what they probably will do is like they're going to do with their magazine, they'll sell it. And it's a valuable asset. And I know for a fact that there are a couple of potential buyers lining up because it's a cash cow. What's 2% of 650,000 Bitcoin? The answer is a lot every year.
Yeah. So I'm going to add in some points here. Number one is remember that Barry Silbert's background isn't exactly this. It's in liquidations and bankruptcies. That's his background. So he knows exactly what he's doing. And the fact that he put Genesis into Chapter 11, so Chapter 11 is not bankruptcy, it's just bankruptcy protection, to give them enough time to trade out of it. And in the protection, they're talking about being out of this by May. So they're just buying time to restructure the business so that they can get the best deal with creditors and the maximum the maximum value for the rest of their business. Now, I think what they will do is that they will sell as little as they need to, and they won't sell the crown jewel. Now, the crown jewel in their portfolio is the Grayscale business. That's the crown jewel that makes the most money in their portfolio out of all their businesses. And they have a very, very, very impressive portfolio. You can see the CoinDesk is on the market, although they're not getting as many offers as they wanted. There are a lot of other businesses that will go on the market. And remember, Genesis is a separate business. The only obligation that DCG, which is the holding company, has to the business, and I'm going to read this to you from them. So just so it's very clear. I'll actually share my screen so you can see where I'm getting it from. It's actually quoted directly from DCG. They said the following. They say, yesterday, the Genesis lending entities filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in the Southern District of New York. Genesis has its own independent management team, legal counsel, and financial advisors, and appointed a special committee of independent directors who are in charge of Genesis Capital's restructuring, and who recommended and decided that Genesis Capital file Chapter 11. Neither DCG nor any of its own employees, including those who sit in the Genesis board, were involved in the decision. DCG will continue to operate business as usual while its subsidiaries, including Luno, Coindesk, TradeBlock, notably they will all continue. Notably, Genesis Global Trading, Genesis Spot, and derivatives businesses will also continue to operate as usual. As previously mentioned, DCG owes Genesis Capital, this is important, $526 million due in May 2023 and $1.1 billion due in June 2032, which means all they have to do is raise $526 million by May 2023, which is in about 4 months, and then they have 10 years to work out what to do with this other $1.1 billion. So I think that this is all a big nothing burger now. I think that this will be over before we know it. I think May be a little bit ambitious, but I think it's going to be over before we know it. And the market, when this happened, the market didn't move, which means that the market already priced this in ages ago. So I think in the spirit of that, we should just move on because it's a nothing burger. It's an absolute nothing burger.
Yeah, happy to hear that, because that's one of the big players in the industry. We will come back to that. Some people ask about Binance, but we'll come back to that.
The two most. That's the two more black swans. That's the two more black swans. The two more black swans in this industry: Binance and Tether.
Yeah.
And you need to do your own risk calculation to say what is the probability of Binance going down and what is the probability of Tether going down, and really based on that, you should make your investment decision. As I said, for me, there's three. 1, Binance. 2, Tether. 3, we get another COVID or similar black swan type event which affects global markets. Those are the three things that can take Bitcoin down to 12K for all those people calling 12K.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So, okay, that's very interesting. Let's move on to the. So if that doesn't happen, if one of the black swans doesn't happen and this momentum kind of holds, we already seen what enormous moves. That's what we love about this market, right? You turn around and the altcoins are up 100% across the board. And for everyone who has been in this industry through a bull run, these coins can go up multiples that you couldn't dream about in your craziest, wildest fantasy. And it happens across the board. So not sleeping on altcoins. Altcoins is where I got so hooked on this market, and I know many of you are very interested also. So let's take a quick. What's your thoughts? Which altcoins are you monitoring? What's your favorites? Not buying advice for anyone, and also to say that just because I'm monitoring something doesn't mean I go and buy it today. It could be that I'm sitting there and hoping that it will dump, and then I will buy. But so it's not a purchase recommendation here and there, but it's important to have a list of interesting projects, I think. Who wants to start? James, do you want to start?
Those that know me, I tend to be extremely focused and high conviction on few positions. I'm a little bit different to Ran and his strategy, but I learn a lot from Ran because he exposed me to spaces that I don't normally look at. So I tend to be very focused on layer ones, and I tend to focus on 3 to 5 altcoins. Now, what I did was back in early 2021, trying to find, something to hedge my Ethereum position. We built two models. One is the crypto compendium that measures centralization, insider holdings, the team, tokenomics, all that type of stuff, and gives it a score. And the second thing is the SCP profiler, which looks at layer ones and measures all the key elements of those guys. So, and I build a composite score, and that basically kicks out, the top ranking of layer ones. Number one is ETH or Solana. They differ depending on what inflation is doing. Right now, ETH is deflationary, so it's actually above Sol. Then there's Matic, then there's Phantom. And then I dabble in the things that I believe have not moved yet, but are undervalued based on these metrics. So that's what I call the ATR score. It looks at how far are they from the bottom, how far from the top, what's the upside, and then I calculate. So that's kind of my strategy. I don't, because I look at all assets, it's very difficult for me to analyze 300 cryptos. So I do it using a model to determine basically purely metrics and data, which ones win. And that's been my strategy. And it helps me keep away from garbage, but it also helps me identify potential winners. And last year was an interesting year because one that I thought would do very well got caught up in the whole FTX mess. So that was unfortunate. But still, I do believe fundamentals will win over time.
You see, the difference from what you're saying, I think you've just said something quite good, is you said, one of the ones that you believed in, and I know when you believe in something, you believe in it because of the data. You don't believe in it because of hot air. You believe in it because you're analyzing the data. And what you're seeing now is that token is actually starting to bounce back to pre-FTX levels. So Solana, from being at $8, is now back at $25. Pre-FTX levels were $31. That was at the end of the Solana conference before the FTX collapse. So we're 20% away from pre-FTX levels, which means just shows you that if you're holding stuff that you're comfortable on fundamentally, then it just becomes a time game. It just means you have to hold for a month or maybe 2 months or maybe 3 months longer. So I have a different approach to you.
On a few altcoins, not general. I have to, let's banter a little bit, because many altcoins have only one pump and they never come back. So it has to be like a real project that has real future.
So right? let me share my screen. And I did a show today on my show where I actually exposed my thinking of how I create portfolios. And I have a very different approach from James. The first thing I do is I look at the narratives, which I believe will be good. And, for 2023 and 2024, the narratives that I've looked at are store of value, layer ones. I think ETH layer 2 is going to be a massive narrative. Then cross-chain and multi-chain. And I've actually separated those. Then DeFi, but I haven't gone blanket DeFi. I've broken up DeFi into trading platforms and other DeFi. Then gaming, metaverse, and NFT, AI, and payments. Now, those are the narratives that I'm bullish on. And then from the narrative, what I do is I create a list of all the... So, for example, when I look at layer ones, I create a list of all the layer ones that are potentially investable. And then I make the case for which ones I want to invest in and which ones I don't want to invest in. So, as an example, I think I want to be very overweight Ethereum. I've toned down my BNB position. The reason why I've toned down my BNB position is because I think BNB is centralized because of the exchange. And if they do attack the exchange, if regulators do attack the exchange and one of the attacks is successful, I think the BNB token will take a hit. And then I've gone into the layer one frenzy, which is Solana, Near, Aptos, or Sui. In this case, I'm going with Sui because I haven't invested yet. And then I've gone into Arweave. And then you can choose which other layer ones you want to be in. And this list can go on and on. But I think if you apply the approach that I've applied, which is first bet on the narratives that you like, then list the coins in the narrative, and then start debating one coin against another and looking at valuations, that's, for me, the easiest way to build a portfolio. So going back to your discussion or to your question, I don't really have tokens that I'm specifically more excited about than other tokens because that changes almost like regularly. But I think I have narratives that I'm more excited about than other narratives. And for me, the biggest narratives that I think for 2023 and 2024, Ethereum layer 2, trading. I think trading is never going to go away because if we know there's one use case for crypto, it's trading, whether it's on options or perpetuals or derivatives. Decentralized trading is not going away. Gaming and metaverse, cross-chain and multi-chain, those are the narratives that I'm looking at. And then, cherry picking in those narratives is a skill. And we have a lot of researchers. That's how we come up with our our bets, but nothing says that we have the right ones. But I think if you apply that thinking, then anyone can build their own portfolio, and I think that's the idea.
That's actually a very interesting response from both of you, and I think both approaches are valid. I mean, it's proven. I don't think we can see the results, but do you think that there will be new narratives in this cycle? We've seen it during previous cycles. Each cycle there has kind of been new narratives, and many of the kind of old projects didn't get the pump that many were hoping for. Instead, the speculative money jumped on the next narrative instead, with some notable exceptions, though. I mean, of course, Ethereum and Bitcoin and all the...
Let's actually analyze. I think it's important to look back and realize where we made mistakes in 2022 so that we can build a better portfolio in 2023. So I think the one narrative where a lot of people went wrong is in centralized exchanges. There was a big narrative for centralized exchanges, and I think now we're realizing that in a decentralized world, best you invest in decentralized. The safest bets is probably in decentralized protocols. That, for me, that's certainly one of the ideas that we made. The other narrative where I think we all called it wrong was algorithmic stablecoins. We all thought that algorithmic stablecoins could work, or some of us thought that algorithmic stablecoins could work. I think what 2022 taught us is that algorithmic stablecoins are not going to work. One of the big narratives that I think a lot of people called incorrectly is blockchain payments. The notion of being able to do blockchain payments. And to be honest, I don't think we're going to see any blockchain payments until the next ETH upgrade, or one of the ETH upgrades, which is EIP1, I think it's 44844 or 4484, which is an upgrade which lowers the gas fees on layer 2s. And if you lower the gas fees on layer 2s, you make layer 2s cheap enough, and layer 2s are naturally fast enough for payments. So that could usher in a payments narrative, which currently we don't have in the market. So I think we've got to constantly evolve as the technology evolves and as the upgrades evolve. Composability, another big narrative. Minor extractable value, MEV, probably another sub-narrative which will play out somewhere along the line in 2023. So we look at narratives. We look to see what the narratives are, and then we take a few bets within each narrative, hoping that we have the sense to identify a winner.
I think also one learning from previous technologies, at least, is that it usually, maybe the narrative is right. It just takes so much longer than everyone expects from the point where the first implementation exists, and you feel like, it's almost there, right? Bitcoin comes, oh wow, now we have internet payments for everyone in the whole world. That's amazing. But it takes so long until it's kind of the last kink is worked out, until that's mass adoption. And maybe the same thing for many of these other solutions and narratives as well. I mean, we had Ether Delta in 2017. It was a decentralized exchange. It had a smart contract ran on Ethereum. It was, it worked. And then suddenly government, arrested the guy and it was shut down. And then it took how many years? 3 more years until Uniswap came along. A better implementation, got a little bit further. Better regulatory disclaimers maybe, and so on and so forth. But it hasn't replaced the centralized exchanges yet. And maybe it's the same for many of these narratives. It feels like it's almost there. It feels like it's months away, or maybe a year, but maybe it's 5 years. It's how many years is it since 2017? It's 6 years since the first working decentralized exchange actually worked. And now we're here 6 years later. And same with many of these other narratives. Maybe it's a 10-year journey instead of a 10 weeks journey until...
exactly.
I think we're a lot closer than you think. And I think the next major narrative is, I'm kind of trying to think of a simple name. I call it the kind of one-stop shop. And that is the integration of all things DeFi, all things NFT, maybe sprinkling in a little AI, but things that have real tangible value to people's daily lives. Integration of NFTs with maybe domain names, tying into payments, tying into a wallet, slick access to DEXs, payment rails, a fiat on-ramp, a fiat off-ramp, and doing it all on a mobile device. That's
So,
it.
James, don't you
Close.
think that that's only going to happen when we get the individual components right? And I think right now we're at a point now where the individual components don't even make sense. Like just one of those things that you said isn't working seamlessly in that. So I think, like, for me, I agree with you. That's the end game, but I don't see it happening like for years and years and years.
I think it's a lot closer than you think, because everything with the central point, the fulcrum of all this, or whatever, the nucleus will be the wallet, and the wallet will be on a mobile device, and from that you can do everything, and that's going to be secret. And we all know who's going down this path. Remain nameless, of course.
Trust wallet. I mean, let's be blessed. So Trust wallet, CZ is spending a lot of his time on Trust wallet. We all know that. And again, I think the reason is that the winner of the wallet, like you say, is the winner of the game. It's the on-ramp, it's the bank account, it's the winner of the wallet is the winner of the game. I think I think I agree with you on that. I mean, there are some narratives that I'm avoiding like the plague. Like, for example, anyone who pitches me social media on blockchain, like, we avoid that like the plague. Payments on blockchain, unless it's, I mean, we took a little bit on.
Well, that becomes very interesting, because if you think about what Elon Musk had planned 20 years ago, product X, that is social media with payment rails and crypto. So the new iteration of that could be exactly what you're talking about. So I wouldn't discount that entirely, Ran. Think about it, and think about social as what people do. Look at Twitter. Look at the activity on Twitter these days. Imagine integrating that into a wallet and payment rails. That could be huge.
I think one learning that I will take for myself for this cycle is that I'm kind of more conservative than maybe you ran, for example. So I was slower to adopt the new narratives than the previous cycle. I was too slow on NFTs. I was too slow on many other things that I kind of felt was a little bit dumb. Then it ran, 200x, 500x, and so on. I will be more open to new narratives that feel fresh, regardless whether I think they will, reach 1 billion users or not. Maybe it doesn't matter, because they can still go 100x from there. So that's one thing that I will be more aware, open. If there's something about, I don't know, everything that I've seen about AI now has been kind of a little bit dumb in crypto, but if there comes something that is real, for example, that could be something that I will try to be more open for in this cycle. That's one learning that I've taken.
Yeah,
and,
I mean,
sorry.
Do you want to try? The question is, do you want to try and hop from narrative to narrative? I think it's a very profitable strategy. But the thing with hopping narrative to narrative, so it's very important that people understand this. Because of the illiquidity of the crypto market, the risk return of hopping narratives is very high. Because if you bet on 3 narratives, like let's say you bet on AI earlier on this year on crypto, and you took 3 bets, each one of $35 or $333 or whatever, however you break up your thing, the AI sector in crypto is up more than 3x because of the illiquidity of crypto. So it means that, again, if you think that a narrative is going to play out, your best bet is to put a few chips on it, because, as I say, the risk return in an illiquid market that drives up prices in a frenzy is very, very high. So, like if you thought there were going to be 3 narratives, one of them is AI, one of them is gaming, and I don't know, one of them is social media, and one of them works out and the other 2 don't, chances are you'll still be in profit. So, I mean, narrative hopping is not a bad idea.
It's like when you're driving and you're thinking, should I change lane or not? You have to change lane when the other lane starts moving, not when it has already moved and you couldn't get any chance to go because they were going so fast. And when they're slowing down, that's when you change. That's not the right strategy, because then, probably, that's when they are slowing down. And I think it's the same with the crypto and these narratives. You need to be early on the trend. The mistake that I see most people are doing, the most common mistake, is that they wait until everyone is talking about something. Everyone seems to be on this. And that's when they finally jump in after having waited
So
the entire run, and that's probably the top. And then they wait until the bottom and sell. That everyone knows you buy low and sell high, but the most common beginner mistake is actually doing the opposite: is to buy high and sell low. So if we see these trends emerging, you have to be early on the trend. Otherwise, it's maybe better to stay away if you realize that I kind of missed it. Everyone is talking about this now. Okay, then maybe we missed that one.
I made an analogy last year. I think James knows this analogy very well. It's the analogy of the bees. And you know how bees attack certain flowers or areas of flowers. And what I said is, when the bees are at a certain narrative, if you're buying it because the bees are at the narrative, you're going to be the last bee out. You're not going to be able to suck any pollen out. You're going to die. So the idea is to identify one or two bees that you trust and like, and identify when there's slight buzzes of noise, and not when they're like now. If you look at crypto AI, it's almost a guarantee that you're going to lose money because the bees are at crypto AI. It's a guarantee that it's an overtraded trade. So you want to be catching the trades when a few bees are there, and then hope that the narrative works. And if the narrative does start picking up and you were right, then double down on your bets. So take a small bet, follow one or two bees, the ones that go and investigate whether there's pollen somewhere. If they find the pollen, double down on your bet. And then at least that's kind of the way I see it. But don't, if you hear the noise, if you hear the buzz, get out. That's the time when you want to be leaving and not when you want to be arriving.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think so too. Let's move on to the next point here. We had something you mentioned, both of you have talked about, and we mentioned it on the previous show. What about Bitcoin dominance? It's something that people talk about a lot. And I actually learned something from you, Ran. You said that I talked about maybe we should exclude stablecoins, and you said no, leave them in, because stablecoins is a major utility of crypto. Leave them in. And for me, I've kind of changed my perspective. I have two metrics now. One, I look at Bitcoin dominance with the stablecoins in, and that kind of really shows how much money is on the sideline, how much is in the market, and then the ones excluding stablecoins, that can be used for seeing does Bitcoin or altcoin run the most compared to each other. And I kind of have changed my metrics a little bit based on our previous discussion. So it's an important topic. And what's your take? Is it irrelevant to even look at this? Bitcoin dominance.
I don't think it's irrelevant at all. I think that we know that all the major bull runs that we've been on started up with dominance being very high, because remember the cycle goes Bitcoin, Ethereum, large cap alts, small cap alts. So you kind of you want to be looking at a few charts. You want to be looking at the Bitcoin chart, the Bitcoin dominance chart, the ETH chart, the ETH BTC chart, but then you want to look at total 2 and total 3. And what you'll find is that they break, like Bitcoin broke trend, then total 2 broke trend, and then total 3 broke trend. And that's the confirmation that we're actually starting to follow the cycle of Bitcoin, Ethereum, large cap alts, small cap alts. So the Bitcoin dominance is a super important measure, because when I see Bitcoin dominance goes up, that's the indication to me that it's a Bitcoin on an up market, not on a down market. If people are running to safety because they're dumping their altcoins, different. On an up market, if there's a Bitcoin pump, I know what's going to happen. It goes Bitcoin, people recycle their profits into Ethereum, they recycle those profits into large cap alts, and then they recycle those profits into low cap alts. It just depends how long the cycle lasts. We're in the beginning of that cycle. We're like Bitcoin. There's still Ethereum, which needs to happen. You know when you'll know? Look at the ETH BTC chart. When ETH BTC starts to outperform Bitcoin, that's the second part of the cycle. And then the third part and the fourth part, as I mentioned.
Yeah,
what do you think, James?
What's interesting about this, and I think about this all the time, and I look at it, and I do believe in my heart of hearts, Bitcoin is a false metric, because first of all, before I get into Bitcoin and crypto, when I look at the analog, say the S&P 500, say, oh, stock market strong, it doesn't matter because 60% of the S&P 500 are zombie companies that would be dead in 8 years, in my opinion, because everything is changing so fast. These legacy companies aren't able to keep up. When you look at crypto, it's not 60%, it's 98%. And people still degen into garbage all the time. And that is very, very bizarre to me. So I believe it's a false metric because it only measures the market share of Bitcoin in relation to other cryptocurrencies, of which a ton of them are bad. And rather than taking into account the overall value or utility of the other cryptos it's benchmarked against. Additionally, it does not take into account which ones are becoming increasingly more important as well, which ones are being adopted, which ones haven't run yet, and of course, stablecoins like you mentioned. And finally, Bitcoin's dominance also can be artificially inflated or deflated by market manipulation, which we know and we can see, making it an unreliable indicator. And also, finally, you mentioned the bees. The bees drive that action too. But what I do think is important, what I do look at, is the performance of the top 50 against Bitcoin. And I think that's very, very important to look at. And you see the action, you see which ones have moved. So for example, if you look at the last 30 or 90 days, things like Solana and Phantom have been on a rampage. Are they going to run out of steam? Is it going to go down to the next layer of layer one? Maybe Avalanche is next, who knows what? But that's kind of the key thing to look at when you look at dominance. And I do think as well, because this time is different, the people that are stuck back in 2017 think it's the same, but it's not, because the value provided by the crypto today compared to 2017 is light years ahead. And I do believe Ethereum will flip Bitcoin potentially one day if the adoption is not there. So that's just my little rant on that. I'm interested in what you guys think.
Yeah, for me, I see it pretty simple. If I share my screen here. So here is Bitcoin dominance. So it's exactly like you both touched upon. We had this massive run from during 2017 when altcoins became a thing. Suddenly, Bitcoin dominance dropped from like 97% down to 30 something, into the 30s. And Ethereum was going to take over Bitcoin and so on. Then the altcoins kind of got a little bit of a hit when the euphoria disappeared. People ran back to safety. Then 2018 into 2019, Bitcoin climbed back in terms of dominance. Then we don't see that here, but then Bitcoin ran up. And then after Bitcoin had run, we got almost the same thing happened again here in 2021 as happened here in 2017. A lot of altcoins really made a huge comeback. A lot of new narratives came up, and altcoins made a huge comeback, really. And then that stopped when the market stopped running. And we're still there. We're still at that point. And what I would love to see here, what my dream scenario would be that we repeat this thing that happened after, this bottom here, that we get a rally in Bitcoin, and Bitcoin dominance also comes back, because then we get enormous amount of liquidity into the market, and then we get another run down here where altcoins really make a comeback, and we get another chance for those enormous multiples. This is then Bitcoin dominance all. Then if we exclude the stable coins, it doesn't look that different. But a little bit. We see that Bitcoin has kind of trended up a little bit against the total excluding the stable coins, but it hasn't really broken out. It hasn't gone up that much in dominance at this point. And so if I try to summarize my point on this here, that because Bitcoin is much more liquid than many of these altcoins, like you said also, Ran, that many of these altcoins are incredibly liquid. So what happens if we get a major run up in Bitcoin and in Bitcoin dominance? There is suddenly much more money in the system. There is more money in the total, more liquid money. And then if people start moving from Bitcoin into altcoins, those altcoins are much less liquid. So they're selling the same money on the Bitcoin side, using the same money to buy the altcoin side. But Bitcoin doesn't go down. Bitcoin goes down, 0.1% maybe if someone sells a huge amount of Bitcoin. But if they then take those Bitcoin and buy a particular altcoin, that altcoin doesn't go up 1%. It goes up, 1,000%.
Exactly.
10,000% maybe, something like that. So that's the opportunity here if we're kind of looking for speculation. That really is the big opportunity because they are so illiquid, especially if they have a big run and the team and founders are not selling yet. There's very little liquidity perhaps, and then prices run up enormously if we get this phase. So that would be my dream scenario for this cycle. We get a run up in Bitcoin, a Bitcoin-led rally where Bitcoin price goes up and Bitcoin dominance goes up. Then Bitcoin kind of stabilizes, people get bored, and they moved into altcoins, and that's where we will have potentially another opportunity as those crazy multiples in altcoins. That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, and that's why I think this time could be different, because I think alts could run at the same time or even before Bitcoin does a big run, because we're comparing apples to oranges and they behave very differently. And people that buy alts often, and it surprised me, many don't even hold any Bitcoin. They're all in on altcoins, which is stunning too. So you're laughing.
They all became a bunch of degens. Bitcoin's not exciting enough for them. And I understand why, because people came into crypto for life-changing returns. And if you look at the returns that Bitcoin made above previous top, we did a 3.2x or whatever you want to call it in the last bull run. The bull run before that, we did a 25x or whatever it was. So people are coming here for the 25x's and 30x's. They know they're not going to get that in Bitcoin. They know they're not going to get that in Ethereum. And so they're coming to crypto as a casino. And then they come to crypto as a casino, and then, they fall in love with the tech and the promise and the culture of, this libertarian movement and decentralization, and they fall in love, and then they actually start learning about the tech. But I think you're right, James. I think in this cycle, people aren't coming here for Bitcoin. They'll hold some Bitcoin, but they're not gonna. I mean, even if we do, let's say we do a 2.5x from previous top. We get to 2.5x will take us to 150,000 or call it $200,000. That's a huge thing, but it's only 2.5x. Now, I don't know about you. I didn't come to crypto for 2.5x. Got to be honest. Like I'm here for bigger returns than 2.5x.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because of course people feel enormous FOMO, missing the Bitcoin pump and so on. But it's like, but okay, it moved 2% since yesterday or day before. But it feels much bigger. But actually, unless you're investing with hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, liquidity isn't a problem. If you're sticking to the major altcoins or something, that's not. It doesn't matter. Liquidity doesn't matter. Bitcoin is just one of many opportunities. So let's move on. What about? It's talked a lot about, at least here in Europe, use of cryptocurrency in illegal activities. Whenever Bitcoin is measured in the newspaper in Sweden, it's always watch out for terrorist financing and use.
They still talk about that.
Oh yeah.
I'm yawning because
scam, terrorist financing,
WEF
invasion, money laundering, tax evasion, and so on and so forth.
Do they still talk about that shit? Seriously, is that?
Oh yeah, 100%.
I mean, even with all the chain analyses that have happened and shown, the FBI and the Department of Justice contract chain analysis, which means that somewhere the US government relies on chain analysis, because otherwise they wouldn't be giving them contracts, right? And when chain analysis does an analysis of blockchain transactions, I don't remember the number, but they said it was so small that it was actually negligible. Okay, now if you ran the same exercise using cash and you said, what percentage of cash is in illicit transactions, I guarantee you it's 10 times or 5 times or whatever the number is bigger than. So to be honest, I think that discussion is such a 2017, 2018 discussion that I don't even want to entertain it. Let Elizabeth Warren and Nancy Pelosi have a dinner party and they can have this discussion at their dinner party. I don't think it's a discussion for anyone who's seriously in crypto. James, what do you think?
Yeah, it's funny looking at the math, and I haven't brushed up on the math recently, but something like less than 0.3% of all crypto transactions are illicit in nature, and something like 8 to 10% of all fiat transactions are illicit in nature. But it's just a World Economic Forum talk track, and I know you guys are big fans of the WEF, so it's hilarious. They still spread that FUD. But even as recently as the Department of Justice scare last week with Bitslato, I thought that was a Russian coffee machine. But the amount of volume that was on that obscure exchange was tiny. It was like non-existent. So anyway, I think it's again a nothing burger. It's like, oh, it's killing the environment and all the other usual stuff. But yeah, not a concern. But it does get the attention of politicians that are very threatened by crypto. Again, you've got the dollar hegemony under attack now with the Saudis, etc., looking for a different way of trading their precious black gold. And there's a lot of change coming. And that's why I always say it's an exciting time to be alive, but be on the right side, because the world will be radically different in the next 5 to 8 years. There's no doubt about that. There will be some type of reset. There will be spy coins, CBDCs, which are just launching. Actually, news about spy coins in Europe there today too. Larson, I know you're very in contact with Swedish politicians, but again, just for the audience here, listen to the right people. Last year was a bumpy year, but it set the groundwork for a lot of radical change, as did the beginning of COVID in March 2020. The world is changing very fast. And just look at the AI developments. It's just flabbergasting. But be on the right side of the change.
I think so too. I agree 100%. I think it's important. For me, when I really got it, was really the Bitfinex hack. Those guys knew what they were doing. They had billions of dollars, $4 billion or something. During 5 years, was it 5 years? They could barely sell anything. They could sell a few million out of those 5 billion. And they got caught. They still got caught. It was turned out almost impossible over 5 years by people who know what they are doing to sell. They couldn't sell even 0.1% of that. And they got caught. It turns out it's very difficult actually to use Bitcoin or crypto for illegal activities. And also, I mean, if you're a crook, right, maybe you don't want to use something that leaves a trail forever. It will forever be there. Even if they can't unwind it today, maybe in 6 months they can, because the AI gets better every time. And the evidence will be there in public for all eternity. That seems really dumb. I mean, if you want to do something illegal, maybe a bag of cash at the dumpster under the bridge seems like a better idea. I don't know. So I agree.
I'm trying to find, as you're speaking, you call them sophisticated hackers. I'm trying to find a video of the Bitfinex hackers.
I'm not saying because I remember, but they did manage to hack it. You know, they had connections in the space. They, at least tried. And
let me show you.
Hang on. Let me show. Yeah.
This is the Bitfinex hacker, people.
Yeah.
And our partner.
Exactly. Yeah. And they got caught.
Yeah.
James said something else I think is worth picking up. The world will radically change. I think COVID accelerated the digitalization. The fact that we're living more and more on the internet is undeniable, I think. And crypto then being money on the internet, is a global technology, inclusive, is actually inclusive. Then suddenly all the politicians who talk about inclusive, then they don't like it anymore because they didn't want it to be inclusive for them. They meant it should be inclusive only that direction, and not for everyone, and that's very interesting. And then AI will have an enormous impact also on society. I read yesterday Chat GPT got like a B score on an MBA test in one US university. So
ChatGPT passed a medical exam today and qualified as a doctor.
Yesterday.
Well,
yeah. So
yesterday.
I mean, the things that will change, it will change. People underestimate how big change will be over long periods of time. We think that there will be like small changes fast, but what happens instead is that there's big changes slow, but the changes are much bigger. So it's really to, a lot of people who have good white collar jobs will not have those jobs anymore. There will be a concentration. Fewer people will be able to add at the top of the pyramid, will be able to add more value because they get another form of leverage now with AI and even more digitalization. And it will shake up and I think contribute to globalization also, because global technology gets even more prominent. No one is going to dream about doing like some local AI in East Stockholm or something like that. It's all global technology, and that will play into crypto currency and blockchain as well, I think.
Yeah, it's
Listen, guys,
in fact, Ran, you got to go, but you put it very well the other week. I think you said we're all going to be out of a job in 3 years, including ourselves as creators.
We have one big question left, and that is what about, we talked about it briefly, black swans. What about Binance? Binance is by far the biggest exchange. What do you guys
what
think?
the best thing? You know what the best thing that could happen is? The best thing that could happen is actually what's happening at the moment, and that's people withdrawing money from Binance and starting to use other centralized exchanges. And if you want it to be even better, let them start using decentralized exchanges. And I'm not saying that because I don't like Binance. In fact, it's the opposite. I love Binance. What I don't like is an industry with a single point of failure, because what I know is that regardless of how straight down the line people are, if somebody has an agenda and you're not in that agenda, and that somebody is backed by the right political players, then they will find a way to, we've seen this, they will find a way to close you down or to attack you. And so, my concern, and again, I love Binance. They're one of our sponsors. They're the greatest exchange ever, and that's what's made them the biggest. But to me, I'm happy that we're in a position now where people are starting to use other exchanges. And I think the best thing that could happen to this industry is that we all go decentralized. In the absence of that is that the other exchanges grow very fast. We want that. Let's have, like the banking world, let's have 5 points of failure, not 1. Let's have 5 points of failure. Let's have Citibank, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan. Let's have 5. Let's have 10. And so if they come for one, or if they manage to sink one, or if something happens, at least it's not 80% of the trade, it's 20% of the trade, and that makes it more palatable. So my hope is that other exchanges rise. We are seeing a lot of other exchanges. Coinbase is the second exchange in terms of traffic. Bybit is the third exchange in terms of traffic. So, we are seeing other exchanges. And for the viewers, I mean, if you want to help this, then just open accounts on other exchanges and start using other exchanges. Now, I know that Binance is a great platform. It's the best. I know that Binance has the most liquidity. I know that Binance has most altcoins, but we don't want one single point of failure. And as much as I love CZ and as much as I love Binance, unfortunately, that's my opinion is that we need to have multiple points of failure, which will make the industry much stronger.
But isn't the whole centralized exchange concept dead after FTX and everyone? Celsius.
Not for the next 5 to 10 years. Not everybody, but your stepping stone into crypto, and the easiest place into crypto is through a centralized exchange. And remember that a centralized exchange is a duplicate of a Web 2 platform onto Web 3. Now, with all technologies, what happens is you get an overlap of Web 2 and of version 1 and version 2. And so I think for the next 5 to 10 years at least, people will still use centralized exchanges until we can sort out our private key management, our wallet management, stuff like that. And that's 5 to 10 years away. So I think for me, yeah.
And I can't stress enough, the biggest elephant in the room is the fiat on-ramp. If there's a way of magically overcoming that, and off-ramp. That's why centralized exchanges, I believe, exist. Otherwise, everybody would be on DEXs already.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And I think it's too difficult for most people to, I say most people, I mean that. I think for most people it is too difficult if this is like life-changing money. And I think it's too difficult to manage the keys themselves. Also,
Yeah.
I think there's risk for physical threat also. That's harder to solve with own key management than with custodial service. And I think the general usability is just too bad. You can't get the general person to start using MetaMask, and I think it's too difficult for most people today. I think the usability in this industry isn't where it needs to be for this to be ready for prime time. I think we need centralized exchanges for at least a while longer for that reason. Needs to be.
Listen, guys, I've got my wife on WhatsApp telling me that I'm going to be late for dinner. So, I mean, I love you guys and I love the community, but
We don't want to compete with your wife. And
Not at all.
yeah.
Been a great
thanks,
chat.
and hope I can see that your head is moving. You've been both nodding and shaking your head a little bit more towards the end of the show. So hope that it's been.
I'm watching the comments actually, which is probably why I'm watching the comments. I see John Paul, I see Dan Green, I see Oba, I see Christopher Marin. I'm watching the comments. There's some really good comments in the chat here today.
There is. I read them also, and it's yeah. I don't want to hold you longer, Ran, but we can. I don't know, James. If you have another 5-10 minutes, we can take some comments as well.
Yeah, let's do
guys,
some
I'm gonna
questions.
I'm going to send
Thanks,
you guys
Ran.
much love. I'll see you next week on Crypto Banter channel.
Yes, sir.
You're there in same time. Cheers, guys.
There. Same time.
Thank you. See you around. Okay, let's take some audience questions. CTO, that's
Yeah.
kind of the whole DCA thing is kind of give back, listen to what's on people's minds, what they should do now. It's going very fast. Next time, maybe throttle the speed of the comments. It's hard for me to see. But yeah,
Exactly. There's
People
a lot
in
of
the
people
audience.
asking about specific coins. What do you think about this coin? Sometimes that is valuable, but it's one thing that's worth noting that I actually noted during the previous cycle. By the time people start asking, what do you think about this coin? It's almost always towards the end of the cycle. So that's one thing that I have, noted, and it's worth keeping in mind. Are you asking because you discovered something new? Then maybe say that also, I've discovered something new. I think it's really interesting. Or are you asking because, you held this bag for 3 years and it's kept going down and so on. I think that's one thing that I just observed sitting in like the back room and getting a lot of these questions. I don't know if you see the same, James.
yeah. Well, there's, some of the questions you have people who are kind of pumping stuff and then people who are talking about their own positions. I think you and I focus very heavily on fundamentals around different tokens. So let's just pull up a question with somebody there said the first half was correct. I think it was Zim. 99% of tokens will disappear. I say it's 98, 99%. And then he said by 5 different names, all of which I wouldn't touch in a million years. So I wonder why people say that.
Yeah. Another Ellen is asking here, Larson, are you buying BTC today? I was a little bit lucky with my entry, so I'm not buying exactly here. I bought a position already. I would like to buy more, but I not buying exactly today. I think I will wait for some event, maybe some pullback or some dump. Then I will. Now trend is up. Then I'm in the buy the dip mode. So now I'm wishing for a dump, and it hasn't really happened, right? There hasn't been any retracement almost in this whole move.
Yeah,
What about you,
it's been an
James?
interesting move. Yeah, it's been very interesting because there's lots of gradual accumulation and very little selling. And I'm not sure for the exact reason about this. I think maybe big money center banks are buying, etc. You see huge moves of stable coins onto exchanges to pick up some stuff. So the big players are in there. I analyzed all the different cohorts, the 10,000 plus wallets, the 1,000 to 10,000, the 100 to 1,000, all the way down to shrimps who are less than 1 Bitcoin. Everybody is stacking right now, and everybody, including the miners. The miners are plugging in all their machines, and the hash rate's going through the roof quicker than ever before. So markets get wiser over time, and then people in the markets try front run action. And right now we're seeing people front running the halving potentially, even though we are 14 months away. I see some of that activity happening.
I agree. Here's another one. We talk use cases, but every time I use ETH, that's in Ethereum, I'm frustrated with fees. And I agree 100%. It was one of my theses around BNB token early. I felt that, Ethereum is too expensive for most people. Cost matters. And I think you identified that potential with Solana early, James, along with many other things. But I think now fees are not so high because there's much less activity. But if this starts running again, it's Ethereum network layer 1 becomes dysfunctional. It's like can be hundreds of dollars to do a single thing.
Yeah.
And layer 2 has to succeed big time for Ethereum to make it. Otherwise, it's dead when this really takes off. We have to remember that with not that many users that's actually using the blockchains yet, this could be 10 times the users, 50 times, 100 times maybe.
And this is why I love conversations with you, CTO, because, I kind of sniffed you out. I'm a very big believer, and we've had our conversations before, that there's huge alignment between telco and crypto, blockchain and technology. Now, the question that I did a whole detailed video on this is basically, what is better, monolithic blockchains or I'm having a this my brain, or modular blockchains. So monolithic being things like Avalanche, Phantom, Solana, or modular, where you have hundreds of little pieces. And the more pieces you have from a technology perspective, the more points of failure you have, the more risk attack surface you have, etc. What is your take? If you had to make one pick for the audience here, where would you place your bet? Monolithic or modular blockchains to win the future?
I think eventually there has to be some hierarchy. That is my probably heritage from the telecom, where we kind of have a cellular model where you kind of have small cells and you build it up in a hierarchy, and that's how it could basically scale to everyone on Earth. But I'm also being skeptical, like to the current implementations of layer 2s. I felt that it's gotten too complicated. It's too hard to use, too hard to understand. The concepts are difficult. I didn't like it. I think many people also didn't like it. They kind of stayed on layer 1. They just kept paying the fee instead because the threshold, it wasn't seamless. It's not that you use the same way and it just works like Apple or the phone or something. It's not like that. It was pretty complex. I didn't like it. And as I feel it's not there yet. I think in the next cycle, my bet would be actually on monolithic. I think it's easier. Usability is easier. I think someone like, say, also if we don't, Solana, of course, is an example, but to bring some other perspective, say Matic. I think they've done something very smart. They're saying we're like attachment to Ethereum, but actually it's another monolithic Matic blockchain. And they might keep running that longer and or keep pushing the actual integration further out in time. So I would think that blockchains like Solana could get another big leg up. And then there's nothing saying that they can't build layer 2s as well, if that's needed. And
I think the key fact.
I've been critical. I love Ethereum. I think it's been one of the big innovations of the last decade. I absolutely love it. But I think they become burdened by the weight of running basically the whole crypto financial system. And they've gotten too slow. It's too expensive. The layer 2s kind of there, but not really yet. And
Yeah, there's some interesting questions in the chat. I don't like calling out names because sometimes people are pumpers and they want to bring attention to their token. But there's one where there might be a little bit of confusion. And I think it was December 2021, I did a video on a token beginning with K, and then you did one too. But people say you are a fan, and I am not. What is the truth?
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, I made a very critical video of that that project. Very critical. I was ruthless, and then I felt that I should let them respond. And coincidentally, it turns out one of the founders was living in Stockholm. He was not Swedish, but his wife or something had moved here, and he moved with her. So he was here. So I let him talk, gave him side of the story. Me listening to someone doesn't mean I agree. I never said in that video that I'm a big fan of the project and I think it's going to go up. I didn't say that. I just let the other person talk, which I think is a right thing to do. And I think people shouldn't confuse listening to people. Doesn't mean that you have to have the same opinion. It can in fact reinforce your opinion almost to listen to the other side of the story. Also, I think he was a great guy, and he deserves to get to tell his side of the story. It doesn't mean that I went and bought coins in that project after that.
Exactly. And you just one thing I would warn, and this is something that I have seen being where I am, is the more things are being pumped or spoken about, the riskier they are. So when you see a lot of chatter in the comments about certain names, it's a scam, because these big chains, they hire or enable with airdrops a lot of people to pump the token because they want to pump their own position. And it can get very political, very religious, very tribal, whatever you want to call it. Just everybody be careful out there. We're a lot smarter this time around. There are great returns to be had, but the place is still the Wild West. And remember, always go into this crypto market thinking 98% of crypto is a scam. You got to find that 2%, be on that 2%, and be ready to be off it if things change. How about that for a final thought?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so too. There's many great comments. I just wanted to say that even though I can't address all the questions, I have actually read the comments throughout the shows, and there's a lot of, so I see you guys. And I just wanted to address one question more that came up somewhere in the middle. I tried to find it now, but it's so far up the list. Someone said that how come these guys think that crypto is moving independently of other markets or macro markets? I don't think so at all, and I don't think any of us do. We don't think this is living in isolation. That's a misunderstanding, and that's I wasn't clear in that case. I'm not saying that, but it is a fact that price has gone up a lot since we saw those signs in Bitcoin, and even more so in altcoins. And I think it's important to separate different time frames. I also don't think that the world economy is going to crash forever. I think that the world is going to recover from this problem as well. Tech companies is going to come back. Now they're laying off people. They're going to come out stronger on the other side. Technology isn't going away. Internet isn't going away. The economy isn't going away. Markets aren't going away. I think it's going to come out of this, and there will be shaky and maybe a more difficult period with more oscillation between optimism and doomsday and so on. But there is opportunity in that. That is what I think we're all saying. We all saw opportunity here, and that's what we're saying. I'm not saying that if stock markets dump 10% tomorrow, I'm not saying I think Bitcoin going to go up. No, I think it will go down too.
And there is just to layer onto that, there is a tremendous correlation between risk assets. Crypto is a risk asset. Nasdaq technology is a risk asset. I urge everybody to look at the correlation coefficient between the QQQ Nasdaq and say Bitcoin or Ethereum, and you will see they move very much in parallel, like many cryptos move. And remember as well, the markets bottom well before the economy bottoms, and the markets rebound well before the Fed pivots, and the Fed is going to pivot sooner than people think. I'm not going to give you an exact date, but all the earmarks are there, and the market sees that now. And there's $4 trillion in the US on the sidelines, $4 trillion ready to deploy into the stock market. So it will be a bumpy year, but it'll also be a year where you want to really think about being on the train.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, at least for me, everything I've said now is based on the situation now. If we wake up tomorrow and the situation is completely different, okay, I will change my mind. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. They will say, yeah, but you said that on that date. Yeah, but then the next date, I had a different opinion. It's okay to change your mind. I think if you're in the markets, it's necessary to be able to take in new information. If you will hold on to the world of yesterday and think that it applies today as well, even though everything has changed, you're going to be less successful. You need to kind of adopt to what actually plays out. And this is what we see now. And if there's new things happening, we're going to cover it in 1 week on Rand's show, DCA in 1 week. We're not going to leave you guys stranded, or what do you say, floating. We will be there and see if we can share some insights. James, do you want to add anything else?
That's it. I want to thank everybody for being here. And CTO, I want to thank you for hosting us and staying late in Stockholm, Sweden. Hard up. Is that what you say?
Exactly. Almost. Hej då. Hej då is bye-bye.
Hej då. Okay. Thank you so much again, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Great show.
Thank you. Tack.
Bye.